This is my informative speech. It's about enovid. In May of 1960, the FDA approved a drug called enovid. Today I'll tell you what enovid is, how it affected women, and how society viewed it. Being in the turn of one of the most memorable centuries there were, this event took place in some of the most controversial times for both men and women in America. It was in the start of the free love genre and the make love not war campaigns, where men were going away to Vietnam and not returning, which led to a shift in the workplace as well as the home, and women stepped up to fulfill a lot of the spots that the men were not able to. So first let's talk about what enovid is. Enovid was the first COCP, which is a combined oral contraceptive pill. It was invented by Frank Colton, according to inventors.about.com. The FDA actually approved it on the day of May 9th in 1960 to become a more mainstream prescription, www.enotes.com. It was actually formulated and invented in the early 1950s by Frank Colton, and in 1957 it was actually used pretty openly and mainly among doctors, but it was used to treat women with menstrual disorders. It was an unseen gateway to a lot of the freedoms that we as women hold dear today. A lot of the freedoms that we respect and value. This was kind of a gateway to help start the movement that led to them. Now let's talk about how it affected women. It affected them both medically as well as mentally and socially, all which are very, very important. How it affected them medically was women were viewed at this particular time in history. Makes you think of the June Cleaver, role model. Very homely, very motherly, great wives, just picture perfect. 1950s stay-at-home mom and wife. They were pictured more as homemakers and not as workers. And like I said earlier, with Vietnam going on, they had to put down, a lot of these preconceived notions and pick up the slack in the workplace and in the home as well. Having the pill, the birth control, the enovid, it allowed them to be more sexual with their bodies. Ursula Andress is a very good example. She was an immigrant here from Germany. She was a huge model. She was in the first James Bond film in 1962. That led to a little bit of controversy about, a woman's role in the household. People looked at her and wanted that for themselves in the household, and it created a lot of uproar with that. Women experimented sexually out of wedlock. Having birth control, having a way to prevent pregnancy allowed them to experiment out of wedlock. Not be confined to the bonds of marriage to necessarily have sex. It also affected them mentally and socially. There's the first American feminist magazine. It's called Miss Magazine. It actually came out in the late 1960s, and it was founded by women of the feminist movement. The writings in this magazine, women were able to speak out about sex. They were able to speak out about their bodies, and they were able to do that in a comfortable manner. They spoke out about sexual preferences, and it really, put society in a little bit of an uproar with it. Another way it affected society is in Miss Magazine, which was founded in 1972 by two women, Gloria Steinem and Letty Pogrebin, I believe. They actually published the names of women that were known to have had abortions before they were legal. They were illegal before 1967. And I got that off the www.missmagazine.com website. The magazine also covered things like domestic violence, sexual abuse in the home, which back then were not very talked about. They were kept very hush-hush if people found out about them at all. So for these things to come out all of a sudden in a magazine that also supported things like enovid, it was a very big issue back then. The National Organization of Women, which is a feminist organization, was a very big activist for enovid as well. They believe women should have the right to choose. They should have the control and the right over their own bodies. Other women that didn't support the movement of enovid and the coming out of the birth control pill saw the women that were taking it and the women that protested against their rights to take it. They kind of saw it as out of bounds. So it led to a lot of headbutting in the social world as well. Other women not part of the movement were kind of appalled and kind of, did the mouth open gasp, if you will, because they felt that women shouldn't have that choice. A lot of men outside of the movement as well saw it as completely out of place for a woman to be able to control that and to be able to take a pill to ensure that she doesn't get pregnant. They also felt that their authority in the home was taken away from them a little bit because they didn't get to decide when and where anymore. The woman now had that choice, being able to take this pill called enovid. There was articles published about the corruption of the FDA too, which led to social issues. But enovid was a very, very important part of history, and it was very important, I know, for the women's movement as well as for myself as a woman. Enovid was extremely powerful, like I said, for the women's movement and for women in general. It was powerful in the effect that it had on their bodies and the effect that it had on themselves mentally as well as society. It helped them to find their voice and to speak out in the media and within themselves. So.